Hi everyone, I'm Sostine and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to make a super fancy pirate coat. Oh man, full confession, I have a slight obsession with embroidered court suits. If I have to pick, my single favorite thing to create is a fully embroidered court suit. Thanks Nightly. Dating from about 1770s to 1820. These are just so decadent to behold, and there are some really epic museum extents that are still around today. When I saw an absolutely fabulous court suit on Our Flag Means Death, I knew I also needed a deep purple one for me too, in a historically accurate cosplay. So for those of you who don't know, Our Flag Means Death is an awesome comedy show on HBO.
Right! This is it! Places, everyone! Looks scary!
It is very loosely based on actual events that happened in actual history. It is about a middle-class man named Stede Bonnet who decided to become a pirate, went around having some adventures, ran into Blackbeard, and eventually died for his pirate crimes. So that's about where the historical facts end. Spoiler, they haven't gotten to the death part yet. They took this thin line of history and turned it into an absolutely hilarious show.
Is more energy. We're swashbuckling. We're looting. Let's have fun with it.
I would like to emphasize that this is in fact a romantic comedy show and takes wonderful, huge liberties with actual historical events in just the best way. It's good storytelling at its best, and I can't recommend it enough. So I was watching this show, enjoying it, and really had zero expectations for costuming other than for it to look good and represent the characters. Overall, I was just so thrilled at how awesome they turned out to be. You just wouldn't expect the detail and absolute gorgeousness that the show turned out to have. Like, what right does a hand-spangled and embroidered court suit this fancy deserve to be on a comedy show about pirates? But here we go. In what is my single favorite episode of the season, Blackbeard enters a posh boat party and he wears this amazing ensemble. He even has little purple bows in his beard. Spangles, the shininess just took my breath away, and I had to have it. Of course, mine would be historically accurate and embroidered because, well, that's what I do. Now, before we get into the history of this coat and making it, I want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, June's Journey, since honestly, sponsors make coats like this happen since the materials got incredibly expensive, to say the least. For those of you who have never heard of June's Journey, it's a game that I've been playing for about 2.5 years now. I blame you, Morgan Donner, for this as well. I particularly like this game because it's a really lovely way to relax when my hands are tired from sewing or otherwise lying in bed for a few extra minutes in the morning. It combines all the different things I absolutely love: casual gaming, pretty pictures, a historical 1920s setting, and a concerted effort to include people of different diversities and backgrounds. June's Journey is a mystery game with June or her friends always finding a new mystery or crime to solve. You help her by finding hidden objects in the different pictures, namely clues. I actually started playing this because I wanted a fun thing to do while waiting impatiently for my machine to finish embroidering, and memory games are an absolute favorite of mine. But on top of all this, it's also a landscaping game, and you get this adorable island to decorate. The best part is that I can just play for a few, read 10 minutes a day, and this lets me go forward in the game in a really nice way, while also helping me relax in my otherwise busy schedule. It's just such a cute game. June's Journey is free to download, and the link is available below in my descriptions. It's available on iOS and Android, pad or phone, however you prefer. If you love the 1920s, hidden object games, or just a fun way to relax, I highly recommend it. Now let's get back to the coat itself and talk about where Blackbeard's coat lands in history. Now, these are honestly a little wonky time-wise, and before I go on, I want to state again that I am fully aware that the show is not meant to be historically accurate, and I love that about it. However, for the purposes of just simply having fun, sheer shenanigans, and just learning about history, let's take a step back. So actual Blackbeard, an actual pirate, lived from 1680 to about 1718, when he, spoiler, died. He did meet Stede Bonnet in September of 1716 or so, and since this is relatively early on in the show, I expect that this would be around 1716 fashion. 1716 men's suits look really different from what Ed, aka Blackbeard, wears. Generally speaking, men's coats are fuller in the back and have these huge cuffs, and the way that coats from this era hang are very different from how they hang in later years. However, when you look at the show's clothing in general, it's definitely more 1770s to 1780s than 1710s. Again, that's going by what the women are wearing as well as the bulk of Stede's wardrobe.
Hi guys, Editing Steen here. Sorry about the no makeup, but it's Editing Steen, it's Sunday and I just don't feel like it. But I was trying to put my finger on why the Coats series, especially Ed's one in episode 5, looks like so not historically accurate to me. And even though a lot of the other ones actually do have a very good shape, like look at the size of the cuffs, the pleats, the way that everything falls, the placement of the pockets, like it's actually pretty close. But the reason I keep looking at all of the suits and thinking 1770s to 1780s is actually like the shape and placement of the waistcoats from the 1710s are very long and shaped very, very differently than the ones on the show, which are much closer to the ones from about 1770 to 1780. So I just want to say that if this is something you want to read more about, I would actually highly recommend this article by Vincent Briggs on Frockflix, which I will link below because it is absolutely amazing. And Vincent Briggs is an incredibly talented artist. Yeah, now that I figured it out, I'm gonna return to editing.
But this meant that when I was going to make my HA or historically accurate Blackbeard costume, I decided to go more into the future, so closer to about 1770 to 1780. Court suits from this era have absolutely stunning sequin and embroidery work, so I chose to make a copy of this coat as my base. This is one in the collection of Cooper Hewitt, which is a branch of the Smithsonian, and it has this absolutely epic embroidery. So I digitized it, which is where I redraw the design and program it on my computer for my embroidery machine to stitch out. I did make some changes, particularly to this area right here, which struck me as a little odd looking. Just an aside, I did go with a French court suit, mostly because I absolutely love that era, but also because when they do go on the posh boat, everyone has French accents.
But there is a vicious rumor going around.
Which means, of course, they have to be French. While I was digitizing, I also couldn't help it. I threw in a couple of evil gummy bears planning evil gummy bear deeds, hiding in the flowers as a reference to my son, who loves gummies more than anything else on this green earth. I stitched out a few versions to pick the very best color combination. Then to make the embroidery actually fit the coat, I then made a mock-up of a coat using this pattern by Black Snail as a base. I then scanned it into my computer and then used it as a pattern to put the embroidery design along the curvature of the coat, also along the pocket and the collar and so forth and so forth. I then broke it up into pieces that would be easier to stitch out. For the base fabric, the original coat was made in a deep purple velvet. And you can see all the great close-ups on Hannah Green's Instagram. She's one of the costumers for the show. Honestly, velvet is an absolute monster to embroider on, so I decided to make my life easier and use a purple brocade. Mine is a historically accurate silk brocade woven by Duran Fabrics. I then went to my Baby Lock Venture machine and stitched it out piece by piece. For the white bits near the edge, I put silk organza on it, stitched out the outline, and then cut out the excess fabric. The ugly edges are then covered up with thick embroidery. Overall, over 150 hours went into digitizing, testing, and embroidering this coat. But I really just enjoyed the whole process, so I went with it. Once I had the pieces, I started sewing the whole coat together. This consisted of tracing out the original pattern pieces onto the embroidered fabric, cutting out all of the pieces, and then ironing any embroidered edges over. This keeps the embroidered edges nice and neat. The original Blackbeard coat is covered in wonderful spangles or sequins that just dance and catch in the light and really add to the awesomeness of the whole piece. I wanted mine to have, historically speaking, spangles as well. Really, coats from this era were spangled all the time. People loved using real metal threads and spangles on their coats so that it would have a bit of shine to it. Hey, Gideon. Most of the spangles they used in the past were made of real silver or real gold. The real silver ones have darkened over years and years and no longer shine and look just kind of black, which is a pity, but it's still wonderful to imagine what they look like in their original state. For mine, I found historically accurate spangles made in Europe, made with actual gold. Thank you, June's Journey. So that's what I used to make mine. I spent a very long time spangling up the coat so that it would glitter as well as glow with the silk thread embroidery and gold spangles. I did flatline any edges that did not have embroidery to linen, and these coats in history were lined in linen as well. The linen lining actually would wick up the sweat from whoever was wearing it and so keep the wearer comfortable, especially in an unair-conditioned Versailles in 1770, while also protecting the coat from sweat. Since labor was cheap compared to the materials, the coat's lining would then be removed and replaced frequently so that the coat would last a longer time. And in fact, when you look at older coats, you'll see places where the lining has been removed and put back on. After all this, I kept sewing the coat together. The back pieces went on with each other and then the front to the backs, and then I seamed it up at the shoulder and was finally able to try it on. Now, once I did try it on, I realized it was an issue. When I initially made the pattern, I didn't realize how much of my breast got in the way, and the coat didn't hang quite right with all the heavy embroidery. So because of that, I chose to put some darts in it to sort of make it hang right. Now, these coats were traditionally and historically made for men, so they didn't have darts in the front. That's not HA, but you know, again, it's for me, so that's not HA either. However, women did have menswear garments made for them by the same makers in the style of menswear. Mostly, they had menswear in the form of riding habits. In these riding habits, horizontal darts were placed at the center front to accommodate the bosom. Horizontal darts are very unusual in today's fashion. We only really see vertical ones, usually extending from the waist up to the breast. However, in this coat, I played around with the placement and it looked like this horizontal dart right here would work really well. So I placed one right here and stitched them in by hand using thick silk thread from Gutermann's. To stabilize the front, for the first time ever, I actually used a historically accurate method as well. I got some linen buckram, which is linen stabilized and stiffened with some other material such as gum arabic. I cut out a 5-inch wide piece of this to go around the front and then sewed it on to the inside by hand, just inside of where the lining would be. I then covered all of this with the linen and then stitched the linen down by hand as well. Please note that any pieces that would be seen on the outside are in fact hand done, except for of course the embroidery. I then cut out the sleeve pattern pieces and then sewed them together to make 2 lining pieces and 2 outer shell pieces, mirrored of course. I tuck the two together, wrong sides together, right sides out, and then masked them at the sleeve head and then sewed the two together using a 1/4 inch stitch. The 18th century way to put a sleeve in is actually pretty cool, but mine is a modern take on that. You figure out the center point of the bottom of the armpit, which is usually the mirror point, and you also do this for the sleeve inside as well.
To make sure that this is the right sleeve. This is the right sleeve. And this is the right side, right? Perfect.
Then you pin both of those together and sew it along the bottom. I then put this coat on to confirm that this was in fact correct, and then put in the rest of the sleeve head with some intentionally put in ease. I then put 2 or 3 gathers in the back of the sleeve to tuck in the excess fabric. This resulted in a sleeve that gave me fantastic movement and also, in my opinion, looked pretty good. And I put this on and oh my god, I am absolutely in love with how it's looking. And so this is where I think I'm gonna stop this video. This video is getting rather long, and honestly, I spent over about 175 hours of work on this outfit already, and this outfit is still nowhere near done, so I think this is a good stopping point. I'll leave this here and I'll finish the coat and probably the waistcoat up in the next video. But for now, here are a few close-ups so you can see how incredible the coat is looking already. Thank you so much for joining me. Please remember to subscribe so that you can see how the coat progresses. Again, thank you so much to June's Journey for making this coat and the gold spangles on the coat happen, and consider giving it a download next time you're in the mood for a fun game. Thanks for joining me.